me figuring shit out.
All right.
Nice.
We are rolling.
Good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about the Me Too movement with suppression of gender categories. My name is Mary McKern.
I'm Kayla Jameson.
I'm Tanina Grace.
I'm Kayla Kateva.
I'm Jada Sigamni.
And I'm Sonny Morales.
So first we're going to talk about the history and the resurfacing of the movement, the types of harassment, the current policies, employer liability, environments, and what needs to change moving forward. So the history and the resurfacing of the movement. The actual movement began in 1997 when Tanara Burke had an interaction with a 13-year-old girl when she was a counselor at a camp. Through this experience, she decided that she could not sit idly by. So she decided to come up with the Me Too movement. It actually took her 10 years to gain the resources that she needed. And in 2007, she created the Just Be Inc. and coined the phrase Me Too. The movement resurfaced on October 15th of 2017 when Alyssa Milano posted to her now famous tweet calling for those affected by sexual assault and sexual harassment to post Me Too as their status to shed light on the magnitude of the problem. This tweet was actually in response to the allegations that were being brought forward against famous Hollywood producer Henry Weinstein.
All right, so within the Me Too movement, we looked at the types of harassment and discrimination as a subfacet to the Me Too movement. We looked at the workplace discrimination and entertainment discrimination, but within this PowerPoint, we're going to just look at specifically workplace discrimination. Entertainment is described in the paper, but these issues would not be brought to light without the help of celebrities and bringing the issues to the public, so it's more, the public has more knowledge about this. So we are just describing the workplace discrimination within this slides. So first, gender discrimination, also known as sexual discrimination, is the action that denies opportunities and privileges or rewards to a person or group due to their gender. Next, we're going to talk about the glass ceiling, which is part of the workplace discrimination. The glass ceiling is a major barrier for women, and it makes it difficult for them to excel within the workplace. A study that I found from Rebecca J. Bennett looked at the issues within the glass ceiling, and what she found was it is most difficult for women to excel in a male-dominated workforce. And women who do receive higher level positions in a male-dominated workforce ultimately decrease in rank over time. Next, we're going to look at sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is unwelcome advances and requests for sexual favors or any verbal or physical conduct. And sexual harassment is really the rejection of these specific behaviors, and it makes the environment very uncomfortable for people. Workplace harassment, we did the same thing as the discrimination. We focused just on the workplace harassment. Harassment happens in all types of work environments, retail, food industry, legal industry, anywhere. Many women are subject to harassment, but normally do not report this due to fear of losing out on the minimal opportunities that they do have within the workforce, and also possibly losing their position. A survey that I found for workplace harassment is the Cosmopolitan survey. It looked at 2,235 part-time and full-time women employees. 29% of the women reported sexual harassment, while 79% of them did not. 75 of men who did commit the acts were co-workers, and 38% were managers. Next, we're going to talk about the pay gap. The pay gap appears in most industries, occupation, and is also seen in higher education. The pay gap is seen through different dimensions such as age and education as well, but specifically I saw age that really stood out and was really surprising. Women between the ages of 25 to 54, their wages increased by 78 to 89% in 2016. Their wages decreased by 78 to 89%. While the ages of 55, women of 55 to 64, they are paid 74% of what men make.
Okay, so those are some of the current issues with harassment, but what we have in place are policies that are either preventing sexual harassment or discrimination, and that is their normal intent. However, they don't always tend to resolve all problems. So the current policies that are in place have mostly stemmed from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, specifically Title V. Under Title V goes over EEOC, and that essentially is the foundation for dealing with harassment and discrimination. The purpose of policy is to try to minimize gray area and any other issues that may arise. If there are ever accusations of discrimination or harassment, investigations will take place in order to assign penalty or come to a resolution. So under Title V, there are a lot of policies that are within each category. Some of them listed are injunctive relief against discrimination in public accommodations, discrimination in federally assisted programs, and the equal employment opportunity. Under the current policy, there are very important things to consider, and that is confidentiality between the accuser and the accusee, as well as legal assistance, and information should never be withheld in any of these situations. So because this movement has brought a lot of awareness to the subject, a lot of organizations are starting to revise current policies and make sure that everything is in order if a situation were ever to arise. In the situation that something does happen, having a distinguished plan will make it a lot easier for problems to be solved.
All right, now we're gonna get into employer liability. Okay. According to the EEOC, an employer is always liable for a supervisor's harassment if it culminates in a tangible employment action such as promotion, demotion, or termination. So I'm going to briefly discuss two cases involving employer liability where employees brought on claims of constructive discharge and hostile work environment. Now, constructive discharge is when an employee resigns as a result of the employer creating a hostile work environment. And a hostile work environment is when one's behavior within the workplace creates an environment that is difficult or uncomfortable for another person to work. So in this first case, Burlington versus Ehlers, in both cases, the plaintiffs quit their job after being subject to sexual harassment by a supervisor. And in this case, Ehlers was able to win her case by providing strong evidence of severe and pervasive conduct on behalf of her supervisor. And she was also able to prove that she felt compelled to resign from her job. So the ruling in this case, or the rule of law coming from this case, was that under Title VII, an employee who refuses the unwelcome and threatening sexual advances of a supervisor yet suffers no adverse tangible job consequences may recover against the employer without showing that the employer is negligent or otherwise at fault for the supervisor's actions, but the employer may interpose an affirmative defense. So in Agnes versus T-Mobile, once again a similar case, but the plaintiff did not win her case because she was not able to provide enough evidence to back her claim of a hostile work environment. And on the constructive discharge claim, she went to HR and they tried to remedy the situation by offering her paid time off or offering to move her to a different department. She declined both of those options and quit. So the rule of law coming from this case was that To establish constructive discharge, the plaintiff must show that the conditions were so severe and intolerable that he or she felt compelled to quit.
Alright, so next we're going to move into the environments that kind of helped Me Too develop and actually become a publicly known trend, I suppose. So the questions we're going to consider when we're looking at the environments are: why are the political and entertainment environments perfect for Me Too? How did Me Too change these environments? Why do we not always hear about sexual assaults and misconduct? And then what is the next generation doing about it within the Me Too movement? So for why the political and entertainment, it's an easy thing to pay attention to by the public. There's a lot of celebrities and politicians that are at the focal point of this, and everyday people tend to gravitate towards those individuals that are famous because of mainly social media and being able to actually see them living their lives and kind of like fantasizing about what they want to do. So they've in a way become domesticated, where we see all these famous people all the time. As like back in the day, we didn't always used to see them. We'd have to be like actually watching a movie, but we have it in the palm of our hands now. And it's very socially acceptable to talk about these environments just in everyday conversation because it's fun. So celebrity and political news can be fun to talk about, but it's mainly because of the content and the people that are surrounding it. The next part, so how did Me Too change these environments? Again, it's mainly focused around social media that really encouraged these environments to change. Social media, again, heavily influences these areas, and it's opening it to the public eye. So when it comes to entertainment, celebrities will go and post out marketing things for like, hey, go see my new movie. For politicians, it's kind of in a way where social media has given them the opportunity to stay connected with their fan base or being able, like their voters and their population in that way. So social media has more of an impact on those environments, say, than the medical environment, which we do discuss some differences there within our paper and further research. And reasons why we don't actually hear about sexual assaults is obvious because it's hard to talk about. When something like that happens, it's not always easy to talk about, but the Me Too movement made it a little bit easier for people that were victims for that or from sexual assaults to actually talk about it, and opened up a floor for dialogue and conversation. Being able to talk about their experiences online or with people they know just got a lot easier because you've all of a sudden found a bunch of people that are victims as well, and you can relate and talk about those things. And then finally, so what is the next generation doing about these environments and sexual assaults and misconduct and harassment and things like that? The next generation has actually, we found that the next generation is actually very, very competent, obviously, in social media and technology. So being able to really use social media effectively and advocate for things that they care about. So online protests, or just like blowing up a hashtag and making it trend like Me Too. They've started using that as their outlet of speaking out and against just different things that they disagree with, or just in general. And then other environments have actually started to follow the political and entertainment industries, lead and speak out about their experiences, specifically through social media. So really it all comes down to social media and actually making it something of, I guess, ease and being able to have those conversations.
Alright, so the changes that need to be made. So one of the big things is the company culture is during new hire orientation, managers need to make sure that there is a no tolerance policy and that it is explained and shown thoroughly. And then also, like Kayla said, the policies really need to be updated in the future. They need to be updated to things that are more current and cases that are more applicable to nowadays and like what they're facing in the workplace. And then also equal promotion rates for men and women need to become more of a norm throughout the companies. And I feel like women most of the time feel like they aren't comfortable negotiating salaries, especially if they're negotiating against like a man manager or just an intimidating other woman. So the environment that they get their offers or jobs in needs to be welcoming and make them comfortable to negotiate and talk about that for the higher pay raise. where men feel more comfortable talking about that and being able to ask for more money. Also, changes in society is something that needs to come and that will come with the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, to make it so that people don't think that harassment is okay, and that they learn what can be taken as harassment even if you don't mean it that way. And then finally, through changes in society, the Time's Up movement is working towards stopping harassment for women and helping lower class women. So that movement is going to become more popular and more helpful in these upcoming times.
Great job.